When Andrew Williams was discovered bringing leftovers home to feed his unwell son, he was a janitor at a five-star New York restaurant. The cleaner was humiliated in front of everyone and threatened with termination when the kitchen chef discovered what had happened. However, everyone there was working for him just 2 weeks later. Andrew washed the final plate and set it on the table before exhaling in satisfaction. The man was exhausted from working so many duties, and the day was really challenging. In contrast to other days, that particular day the restaurant hosted a celebration, therefore Andrew's workload significantly increased. But it wasn't just the excessive workload that made him perspire. He also had to scrub the restaurant's filthy floor every day after work, which consumed practically all of his day's time. When Andrew turned to depart, a tray of dishes that customers had mysteriously returned caught his eye. The food appeared to have been completely untouched and was still quite fresh and excellent. After giving it some thought, Andrew decided to bring the food home. "I suppose it wouldn't harm anyone if I consumed some of that food. No one else will miss it, and it has already been paid for." In an effort to comfort himself, Andrew thought to himself. After a few months of employment at the restaurant, he was still getting used to the reality that some dishes were returned to the kitchen. Andrew was perplexed as to why clients objected to their orders given that they appeared to be so delectable. However, that happened virtually daily. Additionally, Mr. Goldwyn, the chef, didn't enjoy it when people got in his way, so Andrew decided to just accept that it wasn't his concern and disregard these kinds of situations in order to concentrate solely on cleaning and washing the dishes that had collected in the sink. The kitchen was governed with an iron fist and cruelty by Mr. Goldwyn, an intimidating and powerful man. Goldwyn was in charge of purchasing the ingredients required to prepare the menu's main courses. Andrew calmly put the dish in a bag and planned to take it home since his shift was over with the knowledge that the client had returned the forgotten and unattended item. The kind man didn't think he was robbing anyone or breaching any laws. After all, Andrew's decision to take the food home wouldn't have made a difference as it would have been thrown out anyhow. It turns out he was completely wrong. At that hour of the night, Andrew's 2 children, who were likely starving, were waiting for him at home. In the hopes that the food wouldn't become cold before he got there, he bid farewell to a coworker, left the establishment, and took the subway home. The decision to deliver the food was one that the single father made for good cause. In an environment where men predominated, Andrew's wife became the first female fireman to graduate from the city's firehouse and gained the admiration of her superiors. All of this was brought about by the influence of his father, a decorated top-ranking firefighter. Unfortunately for the family, the woman had passed many years earlier while doing the most difficult task of her life, putting out a fire in a commercial gallery that quickly spread, brought down 2 nearby structures, and rendered the populace of the city speechless. Rose Clark was among the first to head to the fire source once the barracks received the call that the gallery was on fire in an effort to save as many people as she could. And the fact that there were fewer victims is due to his gutsy and resolute measures. Unfortunately, Rose was unable to escape the burning floor on her final ascent up the building's stairs and died there, leaving behind her husband Andrew and their 2 children. Andrew experienced the funeral and the months that followed as though they were a horrible nightmare. He needed to care for his children alone, who were also grieving the loss of their mother, as he dealt with his sadness over becoming a widower. For his children, the father needed to appear resilient and upbeat, but as soon as they went to bed, Andrew would lose himself in melancholy ideas. He needed over a year to acclimatize and gradually try to move on with his life. After all, it was dependent upon their kids. Watson and Frank got along well and could look out for each other because they were born 2 years apart. Andrew was able to leave the kids alone when he had to leave for work because they were 8 and 10 years old. The neighbors used to keep the kids on Sundays, but Andrew rarely felt comfortable approaching them for assistance. In an effort to provide for his family, Andrew moved jobs frequently, constantly looking for a better opportunity. He was always a wise and driven young man, the kind of person everyone looked up to and said would have a brilliant future, despite his humble upbringing. Andrew was awarded a scholarship to one of the biggest institutions in the nation to study business as a result of his high school performance in terms of grades and effort. When Watson, his first kid, was born, all of the young man's excitement and what appeared to be the beginning of a favorable turn in his professional life came to an abrupt halt. Andrew was compelled to leave college and start working because he came from a poor family and had nowhere to turn for assistance. The concept of his wife becoming a fireman was still only an idea at the time. After a year of conquering his grief, Andrew was able to find work as a pizza delivery guy, doorman, and even a gas station attendant. But every job has its disadvantages. Either the pay was too little, or the working circumstances were intolerable. And just as Andrew had given up on ever landing a good job, good fortune decided to favor him. He discovered a position that paid slightly more than his prior ones. Following an interview with the experienced businessman who served as the restaurant's director, the promising young guy was employed almost immediately. Andrew was surprised to find that cleaning up in the restaurant wasn't as difficult as he had initially thought, but the rest of the cleaning was impossible. He had no idea that such a big place would need its floors to be cleaned every day, and that it was solely his responsibility to do it at the end of shifts. Aside from the staff restroom, which despite all of his efforts was still utterly filthy. Coming up to your house. When Andrew noticed the light in the windows, he was overjoyed. My boys are still awake, he thought with a smile. Watson and Frank were waiting for him when he opened the door, and they rushed over to give him hugs and fill him up on their day. Frank is experiencing chest symptoms once more, Dad. He begged me not to share anything with you, although he was sobbing a lot. Watson spoke while guiltily covering his eyes. Andrew pressed his smile shut as he cast a worried glance towards his oldest child. Frank was in pain for several months due to a cardiac problem. During a routine checkup, he discovered that his son had developed a severe disease a year prior. The cardiologist informed Andrew that the young patient required heart surgery while they were in the office. Since everyone in the area is aware of what happened to your wife, and I am aware of your story, Andrew, I must warn you that this treatment will cost you money, so be ready for that. In addition to the post-operative medication, the procedure should cost little over $12,000. The doctor added as he held out a piece of paper containing the location of the hospital where the operation might be done. In light of the fact that his firstborn's life was in jeopardy, Andrew realized as he left the doctor's office that he would need to locate the money for Frank's surgery as soon as possible. Andrew calculated the cost of the procedure at home and found that it would take 2 years of diligent saving and budgeting to afford the cost. This period would be even shorter if I could manage to bring food from the restaurant more frequently. He reasoned that it wasn't a ridiculously high sum. However, Frank's ongoing discomfort was intensifying, and his father, a widower, was beginning to wonder how much longer he could stand it. After setting the children's plates of food from the restaurant on the table, Andrew went to the bathroom to take a well-earned shower. After all, the following day would be filled with more frenzied cleaning and scrubbing. The following morning, however, when Andrew arrived at the restaurant, Chef Goldwyn was there to greet him and engage him in an insulting dialogue in front of the other staff members. I know you took the remaining food last night. Do you think I'm stupid? Who could possibly steal the food I so effortlessly made? Shame on you, you lazy sod. I don't have any recipes that a janitor would eat. The next time, you'll be on the street without giving it a second thought, therefore I think you best start to comprehend your position in this area. Chef Goldwyn yelled at him to clean up the mess after dropping empty plates on the ground. When the offenses were at their worst, Andrew used all of his strength to hold on and not retaliate. Though he wasn't the sort to be clueless about how to position himself, he was forced to swallow his pride out of concern for his work. If he lost his job, he wouldn't have enough money to cover his rent, much less pay for his son's surgery. Andrew started to be more cautious about carrying leftovers home, but he felt he had to take the chance. He eagerly anticipated receiving some orders from customers each day so he could take them home and feed his kids once more. To Andrew's joy, they returned dishes back to the kitchen each day for about a month before the cleaner was summoned to the restaurant's new director's office. As a 35-year-old businesswoman who had taken over the company, Julie Thompson was anxious to maintain personal control over everything and understood the importance of every dollar. Julie made the decision to install security cameras at the restaurant on a day off in order to determine why the business was losing money. She kept this a secret from all of her staff for obvious reasons. Julie started asking inquiries as soon as she noticed the lowly janitor was visibly terrified in his office. "Mr. Andrew, I simply have a question for you. What exactly did you have in your luggage last night when you left the restaurant? Keep in mind that lying is not an option because I have footage of everything." Andrew felt utterly helpless and extremely terrified by the restaurant owner's statements. After finally gathering himself, he muttered, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I had some kitchen leftovers in my bag. Food that customers returned to the kitchen but was thrown out." Julie asked the young man, "Did you take these for your dog?" after exhaling a sigh of relief and switching her attitude from one of fury to sympathy. "Or perhaps for a beggar?" As he told the restaurant owner the truth, Andrew's eyes started to well up with tears. The concept that someone would need to give their children leftovers from a restaurant in the 21st century appeared inexplicable to the businesswoman, despite the fact that she doesn't get upset often. But what she learns a short while later completely changes her life. "To be honest, I really didn't have a choice. My wife was a fireman who tragically perished while battling the city's major fire, and my eldest son has a cardiac condition. I need to save every dime I can in order to pay for his surgery." While erasing his tears, the young man continued. Julie posed a really odd question after gazing at the young maid in surprise. "You mentioned your wife was a firefighter and perished in the city fire. That's accurate?" Rose Clark was the first female firefighter to arrive at the gallery that day. The woman who overheard the boy's response inquired. In answer, Julie sadly turned away, sunk into the chair, and began to rub her eyes. Her sincere concern on her face caused Andrew to experience an anxiety attack. When the entrepreneur recovered, she said that it all began a few years prior with the death of her mother following a protracted battle with cancer. Due to his poor reaction to the loss, Julie's father's health and mobility drastically declined, forcing the elderly man to spend every waking hour in a wheelchair and rely on others. Julie then hired a caregiver for her father, and in order to preserve his legacy, Julie took over the eateries owned by that seasoned entrepreneur. The older man served as her mentor and helped her with any decisions she had to make. But on August 13th, Julie's heart nearly stopped beating. That's because her father treated patients at a clinic housed within the same commercial gallery that caught fire, and his session took place at the precise moment the fire started. He was joined by the elderly person's caretaker, who ultimately perished caught in the debris, but, miraculously, Julie's father was spared. The elderly man made a point of claiming an actual angel saved him ever since. He kept saying that a firefighter had saved him by rescuing him in the midst of the flames and placing him onto a trampoline meters below. The woman went back into the flames to save others, and everything happened so quickly that he didn't even get a chance to ask her name. Julie didn't know if the woman who had saved her father was now standing next to the young widower or if she was Andrew's wife, but it didn't matter. She believed that by caring for her ailing kid, she might honor the sacrifice made by the mother who died saving lives. The businesswoman extends her hand to Andrew and pledges to assist him. At the same time, Julie recognized a chance to put her trust in someone and take advantage of it. She expressed her mistrust for Chef Goldwyn and enjoined Andrew to keep a watch on him and let her know if he displayed any weird behavior. The young man, who was wise beyond his years, concurred. After all, the two's relationship had deteriorated significantly. For a period of 2 weeks, Andrew eavesdropped on the chef's phone calls and continued to stealthily follow him when he got supplies at the restaurant's back. He quickly connected the dots and realized everything. The chef had a supplier who was a friend and overcharged for all ingredient and seasoning purchases. By doing this, he purchased items of worse quality and higher price than usual while keeping all of the money for himself. Customers ended up sending a lot of food back to the kitchen since it didn't meet the standards of a 5-star restaurant. Julie and her attorneys conducted additional research after discovering that all of the facts Andrew had provided was accurate. As a result, Chef Goldwyn was fired and put under investigation. Andrew had ideas for cost-cutting and service quality improvements ever since he started working there, but Julie even heard them. He had no one to discuss them with. Julie made a phone call to one of the greatest local cardiac surgeons that same week. She immediately transferred the entire operation cost and requested that the case be handled with the utmost urgency. Then he told Andrew over the phone to celebrate. "Hey boy, your son will live and witness the promising future that lies in front of his father. As long as you return to college, tell him you'll be the new manager of the space you've spent months cleaning. I now want to observe whether customers will keep bringing untouched dishes back to the kitchen." Having no control over his emotions, Andrew could only express his gratitude for the blessing of meeting that woman. He hung up the phone after sobbing and hugging his kids. Even the physicians were surprised by how fast the boy recovered after the operation. Even after business meetings, Julie and Andrew stayed in touch, which allowed Andrew to introduce Julie to his kids. When Julie's father learned that the restaurant's new manager was increasing sales in a short period of time, he was eager to see the young man. They met and talked while taking a stroll in the park. A picture of the former janitor's late wife was accidentally removed from his wallet and presented to the old guy at that point by the former janitor. The elderly man is paralyzed and has wet eyes. He merely murmurs, "My angel, my angel." Well, I hope you enjoyed this incredible story. Don't forget to watch the suggested video and share this stories with some friend. See you in the following video.